This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second to last show of this format until we move to YouTube. Not for everything. We still have our 2-hourly show on the third Thursday of the month. But
Bit of banter.
Little bit. You still get to see our beautiful faces. Or at least for 2 hours.
Chat box, I believe.
Still get a chat box as well. YouTube does have a chat box. We'll also be putting out content on a more regular basis as well on YouTube. Yeah. So exciting things to come. But for now, we're still...
Also, we're the website shortly going to phase 2. That's the members area.
It won't be long. And if you're questioning plants, you'll find out very shortly.
Actually, you've got to be very tuned in for them to hear the answers, but...
Sure, we'll find out.
We will indeed, yes.
Should we get into it?
We can move forward. Yes, you might have noticed we've got a couple of props tonight, as well as a couple of assistants who
hopefully won't eat the props.
No, and hopefully will last a little longer than they did last time, where they had to be kind of surgically removed about halfway through. But we shall see how we go. At the moment, they're busy licking. Anyway.
And sniffing.
And sniffing, yes. So, observation. I have been reading a really, really amazing book this week. And in fact, I'll show you if you're interested. It's called Calling Us Home by Chris Lattishaw. It's got a wolf on the front. But it's all kind of like spirituality, shamanism, and psychology. And one of the things that I really liked about it is talking about the 4 attentions that he's learned from the American Indians as much as anybody. And they're all things that we like to think maybe that we know, but he just talks about them all in a slightly different way. So there's 4 attentions. And if you really get your head around those, they can really change the way that you view life and the way that you think about things. And I'm just going to very, very, very quick whistle stop tour because we have actually got a packed show tonight. And in fact, there's almost more in tonight's show than we've got room on the whiteboard. But anyway, so the first one is basic mindfulness, being in the now. You know, as observe, you know, being aware of the sounds that are around you, the sights that are around you, what's happening now, what's happening in the present moment, rather than what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. Because ultimately, there's nothing you can do about any of that anyway. So it's just concentrating on the now, which is, I think, pretty fair. The second one is actually consciously jettisoning the thoughts that are of no use to you, that aren't benefiting you, aren't being helpful, which quite often is worrying about yesterday or what might happen tomorrow, and actually acknowledging that those thoughts have existed and letting them go, and recognizing the thoughts that are helpful and positive and constructive and hanging on to those. And that kind of makes sense as well. The third one is looking for the learning in everything, which ultimately should be one of your number one jobs as a human being. Every single thing that happens to you, what can you learn from it? What information is it giving you? Now, obviously, those are the things that happen to you and the experiences that you have from day to day. And it may be something that, I mean, I'm in business and I have my own business. And when you hit a problem, something comes up, you say, okay, what can I learn from this? You maybe change the way you do something so that you can't get into that situation again. You know, if there's, I don't know, something sticking out of the ground and you fall over it once and you don't sort it out and you fall over it a second time, you haven't looked for the learning, which is pretty important as well. And the fourth one is movement. That's movement of your body physically, but it's also movement of thought and movement of emotions, and actually trying to take a bit of responsibility for that. You know, if you watch children, they can change emotion from one to the next almost instantly because they don't carry the baggage around with them from the one emotion that stops them getting to the next one. And sometimes being able to change from one emotion to the next quite quickly and actually having a little bit of control over the emotions you feel, because you can't have an emotion without a thought. You've got to have the thought first to be able to experience the emotion. So if you actually consciously work on those thoughts, then that can be really, really helpful as well. So 4 things: be in the now, choose which thoughts you hang on to, because face it, whichever thoughts you hang on to, you'll make bigger. And if they're not helpful, you'll make that bad thing bigger. Look for the learning in everything. Even if there's an animal outside that is there all the time, if it's doing something that's completely different, what's it trying to tell you? Because our world will continually give us lessons if we don't pick up that information. And then lastly, movement. Be aware of movement. So, on the subject of movement, I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of minutes in the company of a Holly Blue. I think it was Tuesday evening. And I managed to get a little bit of video for you. We'll tell a little bit more about Holly Blue after this. Enjoy. It's fabulous. So, Holly Blue butterfly. Question for you. What do you think that the Holly Blue lays its eggs on? In fact, there's 2 answers.
There's a comment here saying, so elegant. I love these.
They are beautiful little creatures.
Nettles?
The clue's actually in the name. They put their eggs on holly. And they have 2 laying kind of batches. The first in the year they lay, because they're quite an early appearing butterfly, one of the first blues to come out. And the first batch of eggs they lay on holly in the spring. And the second, well, who reckons they can tell me what the second one is? And it is the first thing you think of, I promise you. Go.
Ivy.
Ivy, absolutely. The second batch, which comes out in the summer, and they lay their eggs on to ivy. But they're a small little butterfly. You can distinguish them from common blue butterflies because the common blue's actually got kind of an edge all the way around its wings. And they're about 3.5 centimeters from wingtip to wingtip. So they're quite tiny, but they are beautiful little butterflies. They are flighty and they flitter around, and it was just lovely to sit there. And I mean, I've been sat on the chair down by the pond for 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, just sitting calm and still and kind of like letting the world kind of come into my conscious and drift out of it. And the butterfly came in and it stayed there for 2 or 3 minutes before I actually got called in for dinner, I think. But It was cool. It was a lovely, lovely way to spend 20 minutes in the sun. So, God, all these things at the moment. Well, what's our main topic for tonight, Ross?
Well, our main topic this evening is seed dispersal. So obviously we've looked last week at a lot of plants that you would necessarily look at and go, oh, I don't want that round here. I don't want that there. Well, this time we're actually looking at how a lot of those plants get to where they are now.
Kind of following on from our Verge program a fortnight ago.
Pretty much. So tonight we're looking at seed dispersal and we've got all the different types. Now, there's going to be a few questions in there, so be prepared on your keyboards because there'll be a few coming at you.
Excellent. So we've got a couple. The first thing we thought we'd look at is things that kind of get snagged on other people, on people as they go past.
And we did almost just lose this prop to a dog.
We did almost lost this prop to. Anyone remember what this is called from a couple of weeks ago? Here we are modelling it. Anybody remember? It begins. Actually, I used to call it sticky weed when I was a kid, but that's not its name.
Big giveaway.
Yeah, but that's not what it's called.
No, but that's what it's known for.
Yeah, it is. It's the stuff. It's called cleavers. And the way it gets about is the fact that anything that brushes past it, it kind of grabs on and it gets taken and then deposited somewhere else. Now, much as cleavers, if you like, is quite good at that, there's another plant that is even better, which tends to do its thing in the autumn. I remember when I used to help out in the local estate and the spaniels used to get absolutely snagged up in these things. Here's a picture. Now, if you recognize these are burdock. And if you look at the bottom right, they're the ones that really snag onto your socks, quite often your trousers. They get really snarled up in dog fur. And again, it's a really successful way of having your seeds taken by something else and deposited completely somewhere else. But an interesting fact, the burdock was the inspiration for Velcro. You'll know Velcro, we still get it on gloves and things quite a lot. There was a Swiss inventor fella called Georges de Mistral, and in 1941, he got all snagged up in burdock and he thought, well, there's got to be a bit of a use here because this could be pretty handy. So he actually made and produced, and I believe he became quite rich because he was the inventor of Velcro. So there you go. That's burdock and cleavers that get themselves about by hitching a lift with unsuspecting transport, if you like. It's a bit like being Spider-Man and throwing yourself at an HGV.
Well, moving on from sticking to stuff, how about smelling good? Now, if you can give me a plant in the chat that smells good, I'm interested to see what people's minds go to straight away as a plant that smells good.
Again, trace back to last week. You got a cracking example.
A rose, that does smell good.
Does.
Rosemary, honeysuckle. Well, surprisingly enough, we've actually got a piece of honeysuckle here. Now, if only it was smell-o-vision. Oh, they're still going. Oh, there's two honeysuckle now.
Yeah.
But this smells incredible. And I really wish that you guys could smell this. However, smell-o-vision doesn't work. I mean, I don't know if my co-host would like a sniff. Do you want a sniff?
He was.
His ears have perked. He likes it.
Remember we did the video last week, actually got stopped in my tracks on the walk by honeysuckle, and the inspiration to stop and actually make a video for, well, you guys, really.
I'm just helping my co-host unstick himself from the sticky stuff.
Well, who stuck him in the first place, eh?
Want me. Definitely want me.
I think the evidence on the video, mate.
It want me.
Yeah.
It want me.
You're done.
But now this is just one example of a plant that smells brilliant. But what happens when you smell brilliant?
Well,
it attracts animals to your seeds. So, for example, if you've got the pollen on your leaves and on your flowers, things are going to come because they think, oh, that smells amazing. So they come in, they take the pollen, and they leave. And then they're taking that with them, and they'll go on to another place, and they go on to another place. So it's another way, rather than sticking, just attracting other animals to the plant.
So if you think the smell is actually there for our benefit, I'm sorry, it's not. We
Even
might
if
like
it is
it,
incredible.
and we might think it's pretty cool, but it's actually got nothing to do with us, because the average plant don't care less whether we like it or not. As long as the relevant insects are coming along, taking the nectar and the pollen, well, pollen mainly, then they're happy. Job done.
Our co-host wanted another sniff. I think
As
he enjoys it.
Yeah.
Now, next one. Oh, I do have to say, we do have a video of a skimmer later.
Well,
coming along.
It's got skimmer in it.
It has skimmer in it.
It's not a skimmer.
But we'll be showing that shortly. Now, if we're talking about attracting things and sticking to, or well, to people, to animals.
Did you say thicking?
Sticking.
Oh.
Thicking to people.
Yeah.
Turning into Mike Tyson at this, Frank.
Nah.
But what about using the elements? What about a bit of wind? Because if you roll yourselves back to 2 weeks ago, there was a plant that we had on the show that uses wind to get around. When you're a young child, can anyone remember what you would do with it?
Oh. See, I think we caught
Not
them,
a sycamore.
caught them all napping. No, it was
Dandelion.
dandelion.
And you would blow on dandelions and they would go everywhere. I remember spending a lot of time when I was younger. We'd go out into the estate at the back of our house, and we'd go out. God, I made it sound very posh. Estate at the back of our house.
It's a country estate.
Not
a building estate.
But we used to go around there and we'd go across all the meadows, and I'd try and find as many dandelions as I could, and I would blow them. And at the time, I had no idea that I was actually helping out in spreading more dandelions. I was just having a great time.
And ultimately, spreading dandelions is a good thing.
But they can spread a mile, apparently, because the wind takes it.
Oh, I've just realised we haven't got one of our props. I'll be back in a minute.
So my co-host will return shortly. But on the dandelions, we also have them around, and even when the wind isn't that strong, they still get taken away. Now, if you imagine, in the same way that a buzzard uses the heat pockets in the sky to float higher in the sky, same principle applies with dandelions. Can anyone name me another plant that uses wind to disperse its seeds? No. Well, the other one we have written down this evening is thistle.
Very similar to a dandelion in some ways.
Now, there have been two people in the chat that have said sycamore. Well, I believe that follows on quite nicely to our next one.
It does. See, there are some trees that use wind to help them propagate their seeds, but they've actually got a special technique that goes with it. And sycamore is one of them. I mean, I remember as a kid throwing ash seeds, the ash keys, up into the air because it was such great fun when they, we've got them in the start. We've changed the order, never mind. That's the privilege of live Zoom. Actually throwing the ash keys up into the air and watching them spin down. Or we get 2 or 3 and we'd have competitions and see who could throw on the highest and get them to roll out the fastest, which is really cool because quite often they'll jettison in large amounts. And when in fact, it happens when the wind's blowing because it obviously helps to blow them and release them. And then it'll help them spin out to another place further away. And as anybody who's got a sycamore or an ash tree knows, they're really, really good at it because when they do spin them out, you get hundreds of seedlings.
I remember there was a tree, I believe it was a sycamore. I wasn't very old at the time. It was on my way to school every day. I believe when I was in primary school, walking up the hill, we used to stop off every morning, and there would be, I believe it was a sycamore, and I would at least pick up 5, 10 of them and throw them in the air and see how far I could get them to travel before I even went to school.
And as I remember, ash ones were very definitely better than sycamore ones.
They were.
Oops, what's the computer doing?
It's telling us we need to update.
Ah,
typical.
It is. No, the ash ones were the better ones, and I have to admit, I don't actually remember alder being quite the same at all.
No, but
the pictures.
They do still spin.
They do, definitely.
No.
So,
prop, please, sir.
Prop. This one. Sorry. Yeah, right.
Can anyone guess what the next version of the next type of seed dispersal is?
Doesn't work quite so well though nowadays.
Got a spare last go.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So what have we got?
Through eating. We do indeed spread the seeds through eating. Now, big giveaway. An apple tree is one way that spreads its seeds. Can you name me another one?
Pear tree.
Another one.
So the idea being that whoever does the dispersal for you, they eat the fruit because it tastes nice. And of course, obviously it does taste nice. And then they carry on doing what they do and they go around their business. And of course, eventually it's going to come out the other end, to put it politely.
Now, you've already seen the image, but we will bring it back up because we can, of our dearest friend.
No, that's a different category. We don't want that one. That's the next.
It is.
Yeah, see there.
But that's how a lot of things get spread. Is they will get eaten. I mean, I've never eaten the seeds of an apple tree because when I was little, of course, you always get that story of if you eat the seeds of an apple tree or eat the seeds of an apple, you're going to get an apple tree start growing in your belly. So I've never eaten them, and that stood with me. And I still won't eat the core of an apple.
We don't tend to eat the cores of apple. We tend to cut them off, don't we?
We do.
Not only that, yeah. Since we moved into houses, we kind of stopped having a poo in the countryside. So not only if you're an apple, is it pretty rubbish having us as your main kind of eating animal, we don't tend to eat the pips, and we don't tend to poo in the countryside. I know it's a family show, but it's a natural thing and we need to discuss it.
However, it just occurs, as I'm about to say it, apparently it's dangerous for dogs to eat apple seeds, but we've always given the cores to our dogs.
Yeah, they've always eaten them.
They've always had core. Every single dog we've had has always had the core.
Mind you, I've just had a thought. It might be a step too far, right? What are they using nowadays to fertilize and not to enrich the ground in the fields? Human poo.
That is true.
I wonder if the seeds survive the sewage works.
I remember once I went out with my friend and they went, "Oh, we're going to get a picture of this day out on top of this big grey mound in the middle of this field." And I went, "Yeah, boys, it's fine. I'll take the picture. You guys go up there." Because I knew what it was, being a bit of a country boy, and they had no idea. So they went up, they came back down, they went, "Oh, it smells a bit round here." And they all looked down at their trainers and they were all covered in human poo.
Of course, in Winnie the poo wasn't that kind of poo, but Eeyore ate acorns.
Acorns?
Acorns.
Acorns.
Yes. And then, of course, he did poo them somewhere else.
Oh. See, there's an apple call, and both of our co-hosts are back, thinking that they're in for it in a minute. Now, following on from being eaten, I believe the next one is a little bit different.
Indeed, it's different because it's back to acorns again, isn't it?
It's acorns. Shall I bring up our furry little friend?
Yeah, bring up a furry friend on Uji What's It.
God, technical terms around here. Uji What's It. Well, there he goes. Now, he has a tendency And if anyone's seen Ice Age, they will completely understand why there is a squirrel with some hazelnuts on the screen. Now, in the film Ice Age, there are segments throughout all of the Ice Age movies where you've got a little friend called Scrap, and he's taking his acorn and he's running around trying to chase it everywhere. Now, a lot of the time, acorns will be taken by squirrels and they will be buried in other places because they think, oh, I'll take all these acorns and I'll bury them somewhere and I'll come back from it at a later date. And sometimes, of course, they bury that many different acorns that they vary and they just forget where they've put them. And then they start to plant.
So I've just realised that we've forgotten a prop.
Oh, yes, we have.
Yeah, we'll do a we'll take 3 steps backwards in a minute so we can go back to the prop. Anyway, but it's funny. Squirrels are a pain, I think is the best phrase. I do mention in one of our videos later, we've got my favourite kind of squirrel. Certainly locally, anyway.
Rats with bushy tails.
Shush! Don't tell them that might be true. But it was funny. There was a post on Facebook, good old Facebook earlier, and this gentleman had got this squirrel-proof bird feeder, right? I mean, squirrels are pain. We've got one at the moment, but you saw it in the video a while ago. If I put bird food out, this squirrel will appear within 20 minutes, every single time. But this fella had got this big squirrel-proof bird feeder with all this different mesh and all the rest of it. And the squirrel had actually managed to get the cap off the top, which was supposed to be squirrel-proof. And there's this picture of these 2 legs and a tail sticking out the top of his bird feeder. And the bloke basically sort of says, if this is a squirrel-proof feeder, what kind of bird is this? Because they are pretty intelligent little critters, for want of a better phrase.
We've rearranged and changed the garden so many times to try and allow the birds to still get their food, but to keep the squirrel away. We've taken feeders and moved them to other parts of the patio. And we left the window feeder on the window, surprisingly. Nowhere else really put a window feeder. And I came downstairs the other morning, came out to have my morning porridge. And I've looked out the back door, and there is this squirrel perched on top of this slippy plastic UPVC window ledge with his back legs on there and his front legs on this window feeder leaning over. Now, if you don't say that squirrels are mischievous little fellas and featheresses,
yes, well stopped,
then I think you need to sit in your garden and watch some squirrels for a little while, because they will pretty much, excuse you, they will pretty much work out anything that you've tried to stop them with and beat it.
They will. Incidentally, Scruffy might look cute, but he's never had a lesson in manners.
No, he hasn't quite got the etiquette of our.
He's etiquette free.
Stately home.
Yes.
With our land behind.
Estate. He is. So no, he can sit there looking very, very cute. He belches, he farts.
I've resorted to squirrel spray. That smell must be disgusting to them. Keeps them away from the bird feed. Also a squirrel baffler on my feeding pole.
I like the kind of blaster technique. Boom.
No.
Anyway.
Calm down.
If they were grey.
Of explosions.
Oh, yes. Now, you might have noticed we've got this green foliage prop here. Now, it's probably past its best, but does anybody recognise this amazingly beautiful flower?
There's one in the chat. And it is a lupin.
It's a lupin. And lupins have a slightly more unusual method of dispersing their seeds, shall we say. And we thought, well, we'd rather show you a video of it than try and tell you about it, because it's kind of quite extraordinary.
Now, this isn't our video. We have pinched this.
Nicked it.
From YouTube. And this is what happens when lupins decide they need to disperse the seeds.
Boom.
They just go. Now that is pretty incredible. I fixed it.
Boom. Look at that.
Oh no, it's still starting a PowerPoint.
Oh,
Apologies, you haven't seen any of that. It is it hasn't worked. Not entirely sure why, but I will put the link in the chat. So if anyone does want to go have a look, then feel free to.
but basically, we're trying to do a kind of vaguely dramatic version of it. You see, if you imagine you've got the seed pod, and there are 3 kind of sections to that seed pod, and they kind of open up. Yeah. Imagine there were 3 rather than the 2 in my hand. And in each of those kind of openings, there are 3, but there are rows of seeds. And literally it explodes and they just get thrown and dispersed out into the world. It is quite phenomenal. So have you had any luck there, young man?
I think it's in the chat for anyone that would like to have a look.
It's in the chat. So, but it is quite staggeringly amazing. So we recommend getting lupins because, I mean, this one's kind of like a dark purpley blue and they are gorgeous flowers. So we're going to kind of like wait now and we're just going to hope that we might be lucky enough to see a couple of explosions.
It was a bit of luck. They seem to be ready and raring almost. They seem to be looking that way.
So anyway, that's kind of a potted version, the Simple Life Circle potted version of
the quick speed double time.
Yes, the seed dispersal. So just to recap, some of them like to get snagged onto travellers as they go passing by, and things like cleavers, things like burdock, and again, learning from nature. George de Mistral took an idea that nature gave him and made it into a profitable idea, which is really cool. And then you've got things that attract insects to come and take their pollen away. And the one that we forgot earlier is this one. Now, this is a classic case. I don't know if you can see there, large green leaves, and there are tucked away inside there some tiny little blue flowers. There you go. There's one. It's also got a really spiky stem. But this one, bees love it. And we used to have a garden full of it because it's quite a tall, bushy plant. You get a lot of green foliage. And those little blue flowers are pretty, but for the amount of flower you get compared to the amount of leaf you get, it's kind of insignificant. And they have a massive taproot. So I have to admit, I have a policy pretty much now. If I see them in the garden on spec, I'll get out the spade, get out as much of the taproot as possible, because otherwise it's one of those that you end up with this and nothing else. Does anyone know what this is called? I only discovered a week or 2 ago that what I'd been calling this was not its name. In fact, when we actually talked about it 2 weeks ago, it was a different plant that I actually had that I was giving the right name as opposed to this one, which I generally give the wrong name. Oops. No, any ideas? No, not a one.
Not one at all.
I've always called it borage. It's not borage. Borage has got a much bigger, more prominent blue flower. I'd still treat it with exactly the same care and attention if it was in my garden. This is called alkanet. A-L-K-A-N-E-T. Alkanet. The best thing about it, though, is that the bees do love it. And I waited till the bees had finished with this one before I picked it because it's got 3 or 4 blue flowers on it, for the simple purpose of bringing it to show you lot. So, alkanet. So that's, in this case, it's got that colour that pulls in. We've said before, bees like the color purple and the colors in that purple spectrum the most. Also, you've got the scent, you've got smells, things like honeysuckles, things like jasmine, stocks, roses, as we mentioned, amongst others, especially when you get calm evenings. Incidentally, it's lovely out there at the moment. There's no wind and it's warm enough without being too hot.
Bees love the purple sage in my herb garden. They're all over it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and then you've got wind, dandelion, thistles, a couple of classic examples. We've got spin, alder, ash and sycamore, using that wind, but giving the seeds, which face it, are bigger and heavier than dandelions. They've all got a fairly chunky seed. So they need that kind of sail to actually be able to cover any distance. Traditionally, things that get eaten. Well, it's no good getting us to eat it because the seeds never kind of get out the other end. But acorns are eaten by animals. Oaks are eaten by animals. Squirrels bury them somewhere else. And as we know, squirrels, much as they're extremely intelligent creatures, seem to manage to forget where they plant as many as they remember. So in that case, it's pretty successful.
Bury as many.
Yeah, they bury a lot. And then you've got explosion. Just literally lob them as far as you possibly can, because the further away from you as the parent you get them, the better. Because again, you're mixing up all the gene pool and everything else, which is ultimately what it's about. It avoids kind of genetic stagnation.
Oh,
these
big words.
Absolutely. So
now we've been talking about taking things out of our garden. Well, we've actually got a garden comparison this evening. So if you remember, I think it may have been a month or two ago now.
It was March.
Was it really that long ago?
It was in March. I know. Wow. It was in March because I found the video in the March folder.
That's cheating.
But I had to get it so we could show it tonight. It's not cheating. It's part of my job.
Cheating. Now, we showed that video 3 months ago of what our garden was looking like then. Well, since then, we have got an update. We've done well. We've filmed some more video and we're going to show you the two and we can compare the two videos.
We've trimmed the one from March a little bit because we did a fair amount of talking and nattering and bits and pieces, and I've edited all that off. So we've just got the musical section of the March one, and then we're going to show you the other one. Well, we might have a moment's chitter chatter because we kind of are prone to doing that, and then we'll show you the other one so that you've got a real difference immediately.
So here is the original video.
That's it.
Chopped and changed.
Rock and roll. Now, I have to admit, I was slightly caught unawares because we knew that we'd shot the video that we were going to show you in a minute. And it wasn't until I went back and looked at that one that it was quite as clear how the garden has absolutely changed in 3 months. But what's even more unreal, and we'll tell you a bit more about this after the next one, is how much it's changed in the 10 days since I shot this video, which was quite staggering in itself. So anyway, enjoy. What the hell's going on there?
Never let you go.
The eagle at the back of the shot. To the left, berberis. Ross's apple in front. Leaf right up is fantastic. Skimmia's done its thing. Japonica's getting bigger. The white angel wings are getting bigger. Acanthus mollis in the back, self-seeded, getting bigger. The garden has really filled out since we were here talking about this in the spring. It's the ice plant just in front of us, getting bigger. Speedwell there as well, stunning. The hawthorn needs staking up. Our Jonagold apples, we are going to have an amazing crop this year. Look at all those little apples. A statue of Frayne at the back. How's about this? Beautiful purple rose. Really coming on this year. The last 3 or 4 days it's exploded. So many more blooms to come. Jasmine. The scent of jasmine is stunning. And these hollyhocks, they're going to need staking soon too, because they are also massive. I have to sack the bird bath monitor. The elder, we gave a haircut earlier in the year, but everything that had flowers on the end of it got a stay of execution. We're going to have elderberries. Beautiful. And just round the corner from this hawthorn, there is a Weigelia. We've had it 3 years and it's done nothing. I moved it this spring, and as you can see, we've got flowers coming, which is brilliant. So pleased. Behind it, Calicarpa, going to give us flowers in the autumn. Lobelia, white later in the year. Lupins. Who doesn't love lupins? Fantastically beautiful flowers. Choisia, kind of done its thing for this year. You'll remember the pergola from videos earlier in the year. It's now got table and chairs. We've moved Gillian's olive in there. Kind of goes with that Moroccan feel. How beautiful is the fuchsia? Really come out. Gillian's solar lights. You can see the hebe. Mahonia's there. Aisa. It's our seating area. It's lovely under the shade of the copper beech. Water mint, water magnolia. One of Gillian's stunning angels. Squirrel, my favourite kind of squirrel. Here are the geese. Another bird bath. Getting a really good view of the marsh marigold. It was so beautiful earlier in the year with that yellow flower. Weigelia, Love I Like by Burnham. Gillian's fairy garden, or at least one of them. Fairy door in the Copper Beech. And another kind of pond nymph. Now this rose here, I'm really pleased that it's flowering this year. I've only assumed that it was too dry last year because most of the buds came up, we could see the colour, but then they just rotted away. But look at that bloom, beautiful. Now on the frame is a clematis. It's an Italian leather plant. The flowers are beautiful again. More roses and they are full of bud. We never had this many buds on here last year. The anticipation is immense. It's Gillian's three monkeys. Which one are you? So, a little whistle-stop tour of our garden in early June. Copper Beech, love it. You can't see it now, but the magpies are still there up top, doing their thing. See you next time. So, since we made that, the berberis is out in flower and it's got white flowers all over it. And they're not the most spectacular, but you know what? They're cool. And we'll get those orange fruits later in the year. The first purple rose that we saw is absolutely smothered in blossoms. It really is spectacular. The Italian, the purple leather plant that we mentioned has exploded into colour, and it's funny. It's really, really purple, kind of a mauvey hint of purple in daylight. But we were sitting in the pergola last night and waiting for the rain and the thunder and the lightning. And much as it was a good show for us, we believe it was an awful lot better in Whitfield. But that blue, mauvey, purple leather plant became a real bright, kind of almost scarlet red in the twilight, which was quite amazing the way that it changed, the colour that it had. But it was fantastic to be able to sit outside on a summer's evening waiting for the storm, knowing that when it came, we were going to stay dry. And that was absolutely fantastic.
I mean, you look at the two videos and in a difference, we went from just this concrete platform at the end of the garden with no real use. It's now got a fully usable pergola on the end of it, which I'm glad's finished.
Almost.
We've now got chimney down there as well as a barbecue, so it is now multi-purpose. Since doing the first one as well, you just look at everything. I mean, I just sat here and obviously I see the Copper Beech on a day-to-day basis, and then I look back at the video and I'm thinking, God, 3 months ago there was no leaves on this at all.
Oh, just over a month ago there was no leaves on it.
And now suddenly the whole tree has flourished and leaves. And I mean, even though I live here, there are times when you actually forget and you don't realise how much everything is changing all the time.
It is. I mean, I think, we were saying about motion and movement, and we need to realise it and take notice. It's all about being in the now, You actually look and experience how the garden changes and enjoy that movement, but appreciate it now. And it is really cool. And I kind of almost want to go and do another video already, because the difference to now to 10 days ago is vast again. The other lupin down the end of the garden has got a flower on it. It's about a fortnight behind this one. We were trying to work out how we were going to bring this one in, and in the end, thought we're not cutting it. We're going to bring the whole pot in. Hence the reason that we've got a lupin which is massive. But it is, and I'm looking forward already to doing the next one in sort of 2 to 3 months' time, just to keep it as a record. Because if get out, take photographs, take stock, and try and take them from the same place, so that when you've got the two photographs or whatever, you can actually compare the two times together. You know, kind of do your own personal time lapse. I mean, if you remember, Ross was talking about doing time lapse on his apple tree, and it was about a month, 6 weeks behind the Jonagold tree, and obviously it's still a fair way behind it. But we were seriously worried that it actually wasn't going to do anything for ages.
Even though it was still green, it was looking a little bit rough for a while, but it's come out, and it's every time I go down, there's new leaves, there's new buds, and it just keeps going and going and going. Can you stop licking my lupin, please, dog? Clearly, the scent of the lupin he's loving, but it just shows that just everything is a constant change, and there's so much going on all of the time, and everything is just changing by the minute. And we need to talk about changes by the minute.
We do.
Because for those of you who are here this evening who may not have caught up yet, and hasn't been able to get to any of our last shows,
We'll call the recordings.
This is the second to last show in this format, where we're doing the Thursday evenings every week shows. Solely because the shows take a lot of time and a lot of effort to put together. And for us, it's not fulfilling what we wanted it to be. So we have to change and we have to adapt, just like the garden.
It's a good analogy there, mate.
So we are moving to YouTube. So we're going to be posting new content and some previous content onto YouTube in short videos rather than posting big hour-long shows like we have been. And we'll also be doing a big 2-hour show from 7:30 till 9:30 on the third Thursday of every month, just to keep, so we still got the live interaction, we still have everything that we offer now, just in one big show once a month rather than 4 little shows, and you'll still have new content coming each week with fresh videos which you can watch anytime you want. We've also got, I believe it's just started production and is on the way, is the members area of the website that I believe that is in the works and has just been started. So that is also very helpful for those.
So it is all changing. As I said, we cannot sustain the amount of effort that we're taking to put into these shows with, unfortunately, the number of people that are here. So we're moving into YouTube. The website will be up and running. We are streamlining all the number of walks that we're doing through the summer because, if you like, they're people, I mean, even the ones that we've done specifically for the members are not being booked. So there's going to be far fewer actual activities, which is a real shame. But so those people, we thank you for sticking with us, and we hope you'll stick with us on this journey. And if by changing the format, we manage to increase the numbers and things turn around, then obviously we'll look to adapt and adjust again.
And we've just had a question. Does that change anything membership-wise with price?
There is one member that we do need to have a quick chat with, but as far as everyone else is concerned, no. But we'll sort that one out directly. But again, don't forget also, next week we have Phil Eden, who's coming in to talk to us.
We do also need to mention that we do have an ultimatum for you people.
Oh.
If you can bring in 20 new people and they sign up, then we will continue in this format.
But, I mean, there's not 20 each.
That's not 20 each.
I mean, that would be great. Don't get me wrong.
If you can do 20 each, then by all means, bring everyone you know, even your cousin's uncle's guinea pig. Then, as long as I remember, bring them along.
But, we've done everything we can think of. So we're looking for a way that we can survive and keep this going in a format that we can actually manage. But so it is ultimately, it's really good fun, but it's a numbers thing. Anyway. So let's leave that one for the minute.
Let's go back to our last show in this format with our special guest.
Yeah, Phil Eden. Phil Eden is the fella at Dover's Western Heights. He's been on TV. I believe he's been on the radio. He's certainly written some books, and he knows lots of stuff about the Citadel and the Western Heights, and I'm pretty sure Dover history in general. So he's going to come along and he's got to do a little presentation. But again, usual format. If you've got any questions for him, then either let us have them in advance or put them in the chat. He'll be along next week. I imagine we'll probably run over a little bit next week. We've also, our plant and animal of the week will be possibly for us, if you've actually ever looked at any of our branding, the most special animal. Anybody got any idea what they think it might be? The most special
it's not a J.
No.
Shall we just?
Yeah, I haven't actually got my big shirt on today, but
I don't think you'll be able to see mine from this angle, but
we're going to feature the chaffinch next week. Well, if for those who don't know, we'll tell you why we use the chaffinch, what it was that gave us the inspiration to do so, and actually got some pretty cracking video of a chaffinch from the Lake District, would you believe? And it's singing. And when you actually clock the chaffinch's song, then you'll realise that they're everywhere. You might not be able to see them, but you will recognise the song. And the song is actually fairly easy to actually identify.
Save it for next week.
Oh, I'm not going to tell them.
Save it for next week.
I'm just building up the excitement. Can't you feel the tension in the air?
I feel a lot of tension right now.
Oh, good. So,
I believe that is coming to a close for this evening. So we hope you have enjoyed this seed dispersal episode, and let us know in the group chat in the group any plants that you have in your garden. Maybe you can get some footage of a lupin exploding. I think that'd be quite cool,
wouldn't it? Our own, simple life circle
lupin explosions.
Yes,
but I believe it is almost time to bring it to a close. So thank you very much for you all for coming. And I will pass over for the final observation.
Absolutely. So just want to think for a moment, if you like. Our world is a special place. And all the while that we don't mess with it, it stays a special place and it stays in real balance. The skies stay blue, they stay working, or the clouds stay white, the ozone layer stays sealed. The seas of water move up and down rivers. Oceans have the tides. We have the seasons. Plants grow, they decay, they go dormant, they grow. We have all those cycles. Everything works in its place, in its time. And it does a really good job of it. It's done it for eons, for thousands and thousands of years. And all the while it's left alone to get on properly, it does an absolutely amazing job. And it's just like our body. Our bodies are all full of cells and bones and all different components. And you can compare the way our world works with the way our bodies work. They have a beginning, they have an end in their physical sense, but everything does what it should do, as long as they're left alone. And it's funny because every time within your body you get cells that aren't behaving the way that they were meant to behave, something goes wrong. A cancer cell on its own is not a bad cell. It just doesn't get on with all the rest of them. And then they have a bit of an argy-bargy and it ends up killing its host. Bit grim, I know. Our world is exactly the same way. All the while we leave it to get on and do its own thing, it provides us with the most fantastic place. Everything that we need, as long as we do nothing. That's an interesting juxtaposition, don't you think? We have everything we need as long as we do nothing. I'm going to leave you with that thought. See you next week.